He said over the course, he studied the 17 quarterback team relationships spanning at least a decade since Peyton Manning entered the league. And here's what he found. You don't need an offensive play-calling head coach for your quarterback to win. There are no magic schemes. And that brings us to Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. Both are masters at instilling confidence in their quarterbacks. Both create run games to take pressure off quarterbacks. So Drew Bledsoe with the Patriots, he had his career best passer rating in 1997 and other top stats in 98, 99. Okay. Pete Carroll was his coach. Young Russell Wilson, Seahawks 2012 to 21. He entered as a third-round pick, developed a run game, became a superstar. Geno Smith has gotten worse since Pete Carroll left. Pete Carroll gave him a run game. What's happened to Geno in the last year? He's bad this year. So with young quarterbacks, Geno, I guess, doesn't classify as young. Pete Carroll, and this is what I argued last week, he has a history of developing strong run games and defenses and kind of detailed culture, which are really beneficial to young quarterbacks. Drew Bledsoe in New England, Russell Wilson in Seattle, and Caleb Williams. And there's nothing against Ben Johnson. He's very smart. But I got to be honest, when you watch Detroit last night, they got like 7 Pro Bowl level players. They got multiple Hall of Fame level guys. The best running back room, excellent tight end, 2 great receivers, the best offensive line in football. There's a lot of coordinators that would look really, really good with Detroit's personnel. I mean, let's be fair about this. They're stacked. I mean, it's amazing. They're paying Goff good money, and they're still stacked because they've drafted so well. They've hit on virtually all of their offensive draft picks. They've missed on a couple defensive picks. They have nailed offensive picks and then made smart moves. So, and I'm a big believer. If you go back and look at culture guys, like Harbaugh's a culture guy. Tomlin's a culture guy. Pete Carroll's a culture guy. Culture guys may not win a trophy, but they rarely bomb. Scheme guys bomb all the time, and I'll give you an example. Even really good scheme guys, Kyle Shanahan. J-Mac, listen to this. Kyle Shanahan is considered a top scheme guy. In San Francisco, 4 losing seasons. McVay is considered a culture guy. 1 losing season. Even his rebuild season, he got to the playoffs.
Okay. Guys, what are we doing here? First off, Sean McVay had Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. Okay. Shanahan has not had that. Okay. Had Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo and had decimated a collection of injuries. What do you think Sean McVay would look like if Puka Nacua didn't come back? Do you think the Rams would be able to win? Because they weren't. They needed Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to come back. So Shanahan's supposed to somehow find a way to continue to win when he did not get Ayuk back. He did not get Christian McCaffrey back. Debo is a shell of himself. Please just stop. In the 1 year, Jimmy Garoppolo got injured before. I don't even remember who was their backup quarterback at that point. I forget when Garoppolo went down initially. It wasn't Trey Lance. I don't even remember some of those years. So let's calm down. And now we're going to downplay Ben Johnson because he has too many good weapons and anybody would look good? What? Oh my God. No. Now we're down by... I agree that some of these guys can not be good head coaches. I agree. Based off my own experience with talent and management and ownership and this and that. Not within the NFL. I just mean general experience now. I totally get it. I could see Ben Johnson not being a good head coach. I could 100%. I'm not saying I predict that, but I'm just saying it is a legitimate possibility. Undeniable. 100%. And that's why I even said, the Bears to a degree really do need, that feels like they really do need a true, experienced head coach. Someone who you do know, without a shadow of a doubt, knows how to run a team, knows how to do all the things that we pretty much never see. The things that Hard Knocks won't even show you. All of the things that need to happen. And we know that some of these other coaches, like a Pete Carroll for that matter, we know without a shadow of a doubt can do that because we've seen it. But now this idea of like, oh, well, you know what, offensive coaches aren't important because of, a quarterback in 1998. What? Well, Russell Wilson. Okay. Like, would have an offensive head coach run the ball with Marshawn Lynch? I don't know. But anyway, that was more tongue-in-cheek. Doesn't matter. But looking at what happened in the NFL, honestly, when you're trying to make a decision, when you're trying to figure out what to do, whether it's quarterback play, whether it's an offensive decision, a defensive decision, a GM, a coach, really no matter what the decision is, I'm not so sure it makes any sense to use anything before like 2015, 2016, 17, 18 as a frame of reference. What worked in 1998 holds almost zero relevance. The style of play has changed. The way how offenses have played have changed. The way how defenses have played have changed. The type of quarterbacks that are playing have changed. What these individual quarterbacks can do has changed. The rules in the NFL have changed. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here right now? And the better these quarterbacks play and their base level talent is, the more complicated it is to coach them, to help them grow, and help them become the best quarterback that they can become. This is a very true statement. Your base level intelligence right now, whether you're a super smart person with a PhD or something, or whether you're just like an average Joe, graduated high school, whatever, even if you just went through high school, if you go back in time like 200 years ago, heck, 50 years ago, you will be one of the smartest people. I don't mean like smartest in the sense of like, the super geniuses of the world and you're going to be able to like invent the internet now, but your base level of intelligence, just the things that you know and how your mind works is going to be light years ahead, especially if you go back to like the 1800s, like just your ability to understand certain discussions and arguments is you're going to be brilliant. They're going to say, wow, just the way you talk, the way you grasp concepts, because you're constantly building off of the shoulders of the people that came before you. It's just the way it goes. And it's the same thing with quarterback play. Say what we will about Caleb Williams. There is quarterbacks right now that are not starting that if you go back into the 80s would be like superstars. Truly. Because of the way how football was played. What you were asking a quarterback to do is easier in like 1975 than it is in 2024. And that's the same thing for like 1998 too. For 2010, that's why statue quarterbacks were able to survive. They can't now. You would have to be so truly special. You would have to have accuracy in ways that we've just never seen before. And yet they would still be like, you need to make sure that we get this kid a great O-line because any pressure on him is going to be really difficult for him to move. And you would still need a great offensive coach or coordinator to be able to like maneuver that in a way. But what Caleb Williams does, his skill set is so much more complicated. That's why you do need high level coaching. So yeah, it's a lot easier to maximize a quarterback from like the 90s or the early 2000s than it is to maximize and grow and optimize a quarterback now. They can fundamentally think about like Lamar Jackson right now. If Lamar Jackson played in 1980, I'm not so sure they would have any idea what to do with him. None. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes. Like, it took Andy Reid's experience and intelligence to be able to be like, okay, this kid does some things that I've spent my whole life being told quarterbacks should not do. But it works for him. I have to figure out how to like balance this out. Sometimes he does something that looks crazy and it works. Sometimes he does something that looks crazy and it doesn't work. I have to figure out when I coach that out of him and when I let him do it. It's a complex beast. Complex beast. And it's something that potentially older coaches don't have. And it's why having an emphasis on offensive head coaches really makes sense in a hyper quarterback-driven league. That's not the way it was in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. At all. I mean, Troy Aikman made a joke the other day. He was like, man, if this play didn't exist when I played in the NFL, he goes, if it did, I'd have a lot more than like 14 total touchdowns and passing touchdowns in a season. I mean, you got Hall of Fame quarterbacks right now who have like 50% completion percentage or whatever from like the 70s and the 80s and stuff, who are not doing anything close to the things that we've seen now. So we know it's constantly evolving, and it's not always easy to see. It's not always easy to know where that cutoff is. It's very much like when you're growing up with friends and you don't feel yourself growing up. You continue to think that you all look exactly the same. When you're in first grade, if you have a group of friends, all the way up to like probably like college, high school, senior year, whatever, you feel that you all look exactly the same. You don't feel that someone looks different. Then you look at a yearbook picture or a random picture of when you were in like second grade and you're like, oh my God, that's what we looked like. Like that's kind of what it is with kind of coaching. Things kind of just pass you by and you don't realize it. The importance of this coach or that coach, it kind of like you don't realize it until it kind of just like happens. So no. And that's not me saying that they shouldn't get Pete Carroll. That's me saying that it's just not as easy to say, we need a culture guy. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe we don't really need an offensive coach as much as we think we do. Or, Ben Johnson looks great, but hey, he's got a great roster to deal with. So how great is he really? Like, what? Okay. Like, what? Like again, what are we doing here? Seriously, what are we doing here? It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So, yeah. I don't know. It's not an easy decision, honestly. It's not as straightforward. And if you really want to kind of have your cake and eat it too, that's where you try to talk to Pete Carroll and be like, hey, we'd love to have you be the defensive coordinator. And you will have a lot of pull. And Ben Johnson's going to be the head coach, but like you're going to take over some of these other things that typically we have a head coach do, but we're going to have Ben Johnson. We can really focus on the scheme. He's going to be the leader of the team and the head coach, but like also, hey, you're going to be responsible for doing X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C. Like you're going to be part of this too. Like maybe you do something like that. I don't know. But and then he's like, culture guys don't necessarily win rings. It's like, well, isn't that what you want to do though? Like, don't you want to win rings? Like, I don't know. But they don't bomb as much. And it's like, okay. Well, sometimes you got to take big risks to get big rewards. We know that. It was a legitimate risk for Andy Reid to move on from Alex Smith. Worked out pretty well for them. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about, I almost said about the Kansas City Chiefs, about the Chicago Bears hiring Pete Carroll, kind of the whole decision of what they should do, what do they need? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.